My screwdriver slipped and punched clean through the drywall like the wall was already tired of pretending it was solid. Gray dust fell on my hands. I leaned in expecting studs, wiring the usual guts. Instead, I saw another wall behind it. Same paint, same scuff marks, same stupid, loitering sticker half peeled in the exact same corner. I pulled back and looked down the service hallway. The mall was closed for renovation, which is what landlords say when a place is rotting and they're too embarrassed to admit it's dead. I've been hired to fix the freight elevator so contractors could stop hauling shit up the stairs. Daytime, sun outside, normal world, and still the hallway lights buzzed like insects trapped in glass. The air down there had that basement taste, concrete sweat, old fryer grease, the sour hint of something once alive that never got found. I've worked hospitals, schools, meatpacking plants, places with their own bad smells. This wasn't that. This was stale, like the building had been chewing the same breath for years. My phone had no signal. That wasn't weird. Thick concrete, basement level. What was weird was the way my footsteps sounded like they happened a second late. Like the building was buffering me. I'd step, my boot would hit, and then the sound would arrive a beat after, soft and wrong, like a delayed audio track. I told myself it was the acoustics. Long hallway, empty storefronts, no soft surfaces. I've heard echoes do strange stuff, but I don't know any echo that makes you feel like you're walking slightly ahead of your own body. I set my bag down and stared at the hole I'd made. The first wall sagged around it like wet cake. I could see my screwdriver stuck in the second wall behind it, like it had barely slowed down. The second wall looked annoyed. That's the only word. Like paint over plaster that didn't want to be found out. I had this stupid impulse to patch it right then. Like if I just filled the hole, the place would go back to behaving. That's how my brain works. Fix the thing, stop thinking about the thing. Then I heard the fluorescent light above me change pitch. Not flicker, not shut off, just that tiny shift in buzz, the way a transformer whines when it's overloaded. I leaned over my tool bag to grab my flashlight, and there was a clipboard on top of it that hadn't been there a minute ago. Neat paper, fresh ink, big header. Service tech rules. Read before you touch anything. It pissed me off instantly. I hate being handed rules by people who don't know which end of a wrench bites. I almost crumpled it. I looked down the hall, half expecting some asshole from the contractor crew filming me for a TikTok. Nobody. The hallway stretched in both directions, empty and humming. The only movement was dust motes drifting in the sickly light like they'd been in the air so long they forgot how to land. Then I read the first line and felt my stomach drop. If you didn't get this sheet from a person, you still have to follow it. I stared at that sentence for too long, like it might change if I blinked. It didn't. The paper didn't even flutter. It sat there like it belonged. There were 6 rules. 1. Do not use the mall map kiosks. If you need directions, follow the red stripe on the floor. If the stripe ends, stop moving. 2. Do not answer the PA system. If you hear your name, it isn't you they're talking to. 3. If you see a mannequin that has teeth, do not look at its hands. Back up until you can't see its face anymore. 4. Do not enter any store that still smells like perfume. That means it's occupied. 5. If you hear running behind you, do not run back. Keep walking. Count your steps to 50. If the running stops before 50, do not turn around. 6. If the lights go out, put both palms on the floor. Stay there until the lights come back. If they come back wrong, leave your tools and crawl to the nearest restroom. At the bottom, someone had scribbled, hard enough to tear the paper. This place doesn't like being fixed. I laughed once, sharp and ugly, because what else do you do? I told myself it was some contractor prank, like, haha, the new guy will freak out. Except the paper felt warm, like it came out of a pocket, and I didn't remember anyone having pockets down here. The ink was still glossy in places, like it hadn't fully dried. I rubbed my thumb over the header and got a smear, the way you do with a fresh print. It shouldn't have been fresh. The mall hadn't even been staffed in years. The property manager met me at a side door, shook my hand like he didn't want to touch me too long, and then left. Didn't walk me down. Didn't say good luck. Just pointed at the service corridor like it was a dog kennel and he was dropping off a bitey pit bull. I clipped a sheet to my bag anyway because I'm stubborn, not suicidal. There's a difference. I've had worse rule lists. Wear respirator, lockout/tagout. Don't step where the ceiling looks soft. None of those rules mention mannequins with teeth. I tried calling the property manager just to get my own sanity back. No signal. I tried texting my dispatcher at the shop, even though it wouldn't send. I typed, "No service in basement. Place feels weird." Then I deleted it because it sounded like I was 12. I needed to do the job, get paid, go home. That's the lie you tell yourself right before you start participating. The freight elevator was in a service bay behind an old department store. The gate was halfway down, jammed. The call button was hanging by its wire like a ripped-off tooth. Someone had tried to force it with a crowbar. They'd left gouges in the metal like claw marks. That part did not feel supernatural. That part felt like idiots. Contractors get impatient. They break stuff and then act shocked when it breaks worse. I knelt, put my shoulder against the gate, and lifted. It moved too easily, like it wanted to open. Like the jam wasn't mechanical. It was a choice that had just been revoked. The gate slid up with a squeal that didn't echo right. The sound slid away from me, down the shaft like it was being swallowed. Inside the shaft, the car sat one floor below, dark. I shined my flashlight down, and the beam hit something pale on the roof of the car. A mannequin, not a full one, just the head and shoulders, like it had been snapped off and set there gently. Its mouth was open. It had teeth, not painted on lines, not molded nubs. Actual teeth shapes, too even and too white, and too human in the wrong way, like dentures shoved into plastic gums. Rule 3. My eyes tried to drop to its hands before I remembered it didn't have hands. That somehow made it worse. Like the rule knew more than I did. Like it had been written for the versions of this that came after. I backed up until I couldn't see its face. The air felt thicker near the shaft, like breathing through wet cloth. The smell changed too. Less mildew, more warm plastic. Like a space heater burning dust. Like new toys left too close to a radiator. I stood there with my flashlight pointed away on purpose, feeling ridiculous and angry and weirdly insulted. I don't scare easy. I don't get spooked by old buildings. I've worked in prisons where the lights buzz like that, and the doors slam, and you can feel the hate soaking out of the walls. You get used to spaces that don't like you. But this was different. This felt curious. I muttered, "Fuck this," under my breath, and forced myself to focus on the work. Mechanically, the call button was ripped loose, so the circuit was probably open. The gate switch might have been misaligned. Maybe the car was stuck on a floor limit. None of it required me to look at a mannequin head. I popped the access panel, checked the breaker, checked the relays. Everything looked normal and wrong at the same time. Clean parts bolted into a space that smelled like old fries and wet carpet. The electrical cabinet was dust-free, like someone cleaned it yesterday, but the floor around it had a crust of grime that looked like it hadn't been disturbed in forever. Like the cabinet was being maintained by something that didn't have feet. While I worked, I kept hearing small noises from down the hallway. Not footsteps, just the building settling. A click, a soft scrape, a sound like someone shifting in a chair. Every time I looked up, there was nothing but fluorescent panels and concrete. I told myself, get it running enough for contractors. Don't be a hero. Don't go exploring. That's another lie. I tightened the last screw on the call button housing. Temporary, not pretty, and that's when the PA crackled. Not a test tone, not music. A voice, flat and cheerful, like an employee training tape. "Micah Reynolds, please return to the customer service desk." My name hit me like a slap. I hadn't told anyone here my name. The property manager called me Buddy on the phone. The invoice just said Tech. Rule 2. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe right. I kept my head down and tightened a bolt until my wrist hurt. The bolt didn't need tightening. I just needed my hands to do something besides shake. The PA went quiet for 10 seconds. Then it came back. Same voice, same cheer. "Micah Reynolds, your mother is waiting." That one almost got me. Not because I believe in ghosts or whatever, because my mother died 3 years ago and my brain still reaches for her like a missing tooth. It's a reflex. You burn your hand and you want your mom. You mess up and you want your mom. You hear her name and your chest opens like a trap. My hand shook. The wrench slipped and clanged off the metal frame. The sound echoed and then lagged, like the hallway replayed it back to me a second later, softer, like it wanted me to hear it twice. I typed my mother's name into my phone out of pure reflex, like I could call her if I just pressed hard enough. No signal. Of course. I opened my photos without thinking and scrolled to the last one I had of her, the one where she's smiling and squinting into sunlight, and my thumb hovered over it like it was a button that could restart time. The fluorescent light above the shaft buzzed again, higher this time. The air around my ears felt tight, the way pressure shifts before a storm. I shoved the phone back in my pocket like it burned me. The red stripe on the floor was about 10 feet away, running down the hallway like a vein. I hadn't noticed it earlier. I'm telling you, it wasn't there. I would have noticed a bright red stripe in a gray corridor. It wasn't subtle. It looked freshly painted, glossy and wet looking, but when I crouched and touched it, it was dry. Warm though. The concrete around it was cold. The stripe was warm like skin after a fever. Rule 1, follow the red stripe. I didn't want to. I wanted to grab my bag, march back to the side door, and go tell the property manager he can get someone else to deal with his haunted bullshit. But I also wanted an explanation. I wanted to understand how my name ended up on the PA. I wanted to find whoever was fucking with me and break their nose with my flashlight. So I followed the stripe because anger makes you stupid and curiosity makes you braver than you deserve. The stripe led past a row of shuttered stores. Most of them were empty, just gray darkness behind the gates. The metal slats were dusty and bent. Some had dents like someone slammed a cart into them over and over. One storefront had a faint pink glow inside, like a perfume ad still playing in a dead loop. It smelled sweet in the hallway, like someone sprayed a whole bottle and then left a rot. Rule 4, the smell wasn't just in the air. It crawled into your nose and sat there, thick and sticky. It had that high-end department store bite to it. Flowers and alcohol and something like sugar burning. I kept walking, holding my breath like a kid sneaking past a smoker. The smell tried to stick to the back of my throat anyway. It made my eyes water. Behind the gate, something moved. Not a person. Too smooth. Like fabric sliding over plastic. Like a dress swaying without wind. My brain did a stupid thing where it wanted to prove it wrong. I stepped closer. The gate rattled once, like a finger-tapping metal. Not a shove. Not an accident. A top, top, top. Patient. I jerked back so hard I almost tripped on the stripe. My boot squeaked. The squeak echoed, then echoed again, delayed. I kept moving, fast enough that my breathing turned loud in my ears. The stripe took me to a set of double doors, marked restrooms. The sign was sun-faded. The doors were clean, like someone wiped them this morning. No grime around the handles. No fingerprints. Just clean plastic push bars. I didn't want to go in. I also didn't want to stay in a hallway where the building knew my dead mother's name. I pushed through. Inside, the restroom lights were on. The mirrors looked normal. The tiles were dry. No graffiti. No smell. It didn't fit. Every public restroom in a dead mall should look like a crime scene. This looked like an airport bathroom at 6 a.m. before anyone destroys it. The air was cool and still, like the ventilation actually worked. The hum from the hallway faded to a dull buzz. I walked to the sink and ran water. It came out clear, warm. I splashed my face and stared at myself. My reflection blinked a half-second late. Not like tired late, like delayed footage. Like my face was a video stream with bad connection. I froze with water dripping off my chin. I blinked again, slowly on purpose. Late again, the skin around my eyes tightened. My stomach did that slow sink it does when you miss a step in the dark. I leaned closer. My reflection leaned closer too, but its eyes tracked something over my shoulder that I couldn't see. I spun around. Empty stalls. Empty sinks. Empty air. The stall doors were all closed, but the gaps at the bottom were black and still. No feet. No sados. When I turned back, my reflection was smiling. Not me smiling. The reflection. It smiled like it had been waiting for me to notice. Like a cashier who's sick of you digging for change. It lifted a hand and pressed its palm against the mirror like it wanted through. The glass didn't fog. The hand didn't smudge. It just sat there, perfect, patient. Rule 1 said don't use the kiosks. Nothing about mirrors. Still felt like the same category of things that show you where you are. I stepped back and my reflection's smile widened. It mouthed words silently. I couldn't hear it, but my brain filled in the shape. Micah, Micah, Micah. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once. Not off, just a brief dim, like someone blinked the whole room. I grabbed a wad of paper towels and wiped my face hard enough to sting, like I could wipe the feeling off too. Then I avoided looking at the mirror and walked out fast. The hallway outside the restroom wasn't the same hallway. Same doors, same ceiling, same red stripe, but the stores were different. Signs I didn't recognize. One said Garden Court in letters too cheerful for underground concrete. Another had a sun logo I'd never seen, bright and cartoonish. The font looked newer, like it didn't belong with the old cracked tile and stained drop ceiling. I stopped dead. My first thought was, I came out the wrong door. Maybe there's another restroom exit. Maybe I walked through a service corridor without realizing. Except the stripe was still under my boots and the doors behind me. The restroom doors, they were there, but the sign was gone. Just blank wall where it should have been, like the building decided the label wasn't needed anymore. My palms started sweating. I rubbed them on my jeans like a nervous habit I didn't know I had. Rule 1, if the stripe ends, stop moving. The stripe hadn't ended. That was the problem. It was leading me somewhere I'd never seen. I looked back over my shoulder at the blank wall, and I swear the concrete looked smoother than before. Like it was healing. Like the building didn't want openings. A soft sound came from behind me. Running. Rule 5. It wasn't distant. It was right there like a kid sprinting down the hall barefoot. I could hear skin slap tile. Fussed. Excited. Not angry. Playful. Like a game. Every part of me screamed to run. To turn and run and kick whatever it was in the face. To not let it get close. I forced my legs to walk. 1 step. 2. 3. The running stayed behind me, matching my pace like it could do this all day. Like it had all the time in the world, and I had a limited number of heartbeats. I started counting under my breath because my voice felt like the only anchor I had. 8, 9. The stripe went straight. No turns. No doors that looked familiar. The hum and the lights changed pitch again, almost like laughter. The running got closer. I could hear breathing now, wet and shallow, like someone sprinting with their mouth open. 20, 21. My mouth went dry. My heartbeat pounded in my ears so hard it felt like the building was knocking from inside my skull. 30. Something brushed the back of my jacket, light as fingers. I flinched but kept walking. My skin crawled like ants were under it. 40. The breath behind me was right on my neck now. Perfume sweet, like the occupied store smell, but concentrated, like someone exhaled it into my hair. 48, 49, 50. The running stopped. Rule 5 said if it stops before 50, do not turn around. It stopped at 50 exactly, like it knew the fucking rule too. Like it was timing me. Like it wanted me to think I'd won. I didn't turn. I didn't even let my head twitch. I kept walking anyway, because my body didn't want to test the fine print. The stripe led into an open atrium that should have been full of skylight. Instead, there was a ceiling of fluorescent panels, buzzing. In the middle sat a fountain with no water. Coins covered the bottom like dead eyes. The tiles around it were clean, like people had been tossing coins in yesterday. Around the fountain stood mannequins, posed like they were mid-conversation. Not in store windows, just out in the open, like the mall had customers again. That's when my anger finally cracked into real fear, because mannequins are only funny until they're arranged like a crowd. There were maybe 15 of them, more in the shadows. Some looked new, Smooth white plastic, glossy. Some looked old, yellowed, scuffed, with chipped paint like they'd been dragged. One mannequin wore a security guard uniform. One wore a kid's backpack. One wore a wedding dress with a stain down the front. They all had teeth. Rule 3 again. I could see the teeth, even from a distance, little white lines and open mouths, too detailed to be decorative. One mannequin had lipstick smeared around its mouth like it had been eating. I kept my eyes on their faces and forced myself not to glance at their hands. That was the sick part. The rule made me want to check. Like curiosity was a hook and the rule was the barb. As I walked past, one of them turned its head. Slow. Plastic scraping plastic. The sound ran up my spine like cold water. I didn't look at its hands. I kept my eyes locked on its face because the face I could handle. The hands were the unknown. The hand with a punchline. The head turned until it was facing me straight on. Its teeth showed in a grin that was too wide for its molded cheeks. I backed up until I couldn't see its face anymore, like the rules said. I took small steps backward, feeling like an idiot, eyes forward, trying not to trip. The moment its face left my view, I heard a soft clatter behind me, like something dropping to the floor, and then the sound of fingers skittering away. Not footsteps, fingers, nails, fast little taps across tile. I didn't turn. My throat was tight. I was breathing shallow like I'd been punched in the stomach. I kept moving, not toward the mannequins, but away from the fountain, away from the center of the atrium where I felt exposed. I spotted a stairwell door on the far side, metal with a push bar. Exit signs above it glowed red. Real red, not stripe red. The kind that means outside. Safety. I went to it like it was a lifeboat. The door opened too easily, like it had been waiting. The stairwell smelled like dust and cold metal, a relief compared to perfume and plastic. I climbed up 2 steps at a time, my boots clanging on the grated stairs. Upstairs should have put me closer to daylight. Instead, it put me in a corridor of closed stores that smelled like chlorine and new paint. Renovation smell. Normal. For a second, I almost believed I'd hallucinated the rest. Like maybe I'd had a panic attack. Like maybe grief does weird things and I'd been alone too long. Then I saw my tool bag sitting in the middle of the corridor. I hadn't brought it up here. It was unzipped. My clipboard rules sheet sat on top, like it was waiting for me. The bag looked clean, like it had been brushed off, like someone handled it with care. That hit me harder than if it looked tossed. Care implies intention. Care implies you're being managed. Beside it was a little plastic name badge, the kind mall employees wear face down. I stared at it for a long time without touching it, like it might bite. Then I flipped it over. Hello, my name is Micah. No last name, just Micah, like the building had decided that's all I needed. I felt anger rise, hot and stupid. Like, no, fuck you. You don't name me. You don't file me. I'm not a piece of lost property. My hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. I grabbed the badge. It was warm, not been sitting under a light warm like it came off skin. I held it up to the fluorescent panel above me. The plastic surface had tiny scratches, like it had been worn, like it had rubbed against fabric, against a chest, against movement. I imagined myself wearing it. The idea made my stomach twist. Not because it was embarrassing, because it felt like a claim. I snapped it in half. The cracks sounded too loud, like a gunshot in an empty hall. The lights went out instantly. Rule 6. I didn't hesitate. I dropped to my knees so fast, I bruised them and slapped both palms onto the tile floor. The floor was cold, damp. It felt like kneeling on a tomb. I could smell the hallway now with the lights off. It wasn't just paint and chlorine. Under it was that sweet perfume again, thick and eager, like someone opened a bottle and poured it into the air vents. In the darkness, something moved around me. Not footsteps, more like crawling, lots of joints bending wrong. I heard the soft pop of plastic against tile, then a wet drag like something skinless sliding. I kept my palms flat and tried not to curl my fingers because the tile felt alive, slightly textured, like the surface had pores. My palms stuck a little when I shifted. I forced myself not to lift them. I forced myself to breathe through my mouth, even though the perfume taste coated my tongue. Something brushed my elbow. I didn't move. Something leaned close enough that I felt warmth against the side of my face. A breath. Not human. Too steady. Too controlled. Like a vent exhaling. I stayed on the floor and tried not to gag. The lights came back. Wrong. They weren't white anymore. They were a sickly yellow-green, like the inside of an old aquarium. The corridor looked diseased under it. The paint on the walls took on a damp sheen. The tile under my hands looked darker than it should have, like it was stained. Rule 6 said crawl to the nearest restroom. I didn't stand. I crawled. My knees burned. My palms slid on wet tile that hadn't been wet before. I left streaks behind me that looked darker than water. When I glanced down, the streaks were the color of weak tea, like rust mixed with spit. My tool bag was still there, open, the clipboard still sitting on top like a polite suggestion. The broken badge pieces laying next to it, but the fracture line looked softened, like it was already trying to close. I didn't touch any of it. I crawled along the corridor, keeping my body low, forcing my breathing to stay quiet. The greenish lights hummed with a low vibration that I felt in my teeth. A few doors down, I saw a restroom sign. This one wasn't the faded public kind. This one was a cheap plastic placard screwed into the wall, and it said employees only. I shoved the door open with my shoulder. Inside, the air was colder. The mirrors were all covered with brown paper like a remodel. The sinks had no faucets. The stalls had no doors. The place felt stripped down to the idea of a restroom, like someone built a set and forgot the props. The tile here was dry, thank God. The greenish light made the brown paper look like old skin. I crawled into the farthest stall and pressed my back to the wall, panting like I'd run a mile. My knees throbbed. My palms stung like I'd scraped them on sandpaper. I tried to think like a tech, like a guy with a job. Okay, lights went out. Emergency circuit did something weird. Maybe there's a generator. Maybe the ballast is failing. Maybe. My brain kept throwing me normal explanations like it was desperate to be useful. Then I noticed the writing on the brown paper. Not marker, not pen, indented like someone wrote it from the other side with their fingernail. It was my name, over and over. Micah, Micah, Micah. The letters were uneven, pressed too hard in places like whoever did it got excited. The paper puckered where the pressure was strongest. There were long streaks between some names like a nail dragged while moving. And beneath it, one clear sentence, pressed so hard the paper almost tore. If you won't wear it, we'll wear you. My stomach turned. I swallowed and tasted perfume anyway. The greenish light above the stall flickered, slow, like a heartbeat. I heard the running again in the hallway outside the restroom. Closer than before. Not playful now. Fussed. Angry. Like someone sprinting to catch you. It stopped right outside the stall. A shadow fell across the floor. Thin legs, too long, bent like a mannequin trying to imitate a human stance. Then fingers slid under the stall gap. Not plastic. Not skin. Something between pale and smooth, with knuckles that popped like bubble wrap when they bent. The fingers were too long and too careful, like whoever owned them had practiced being polite. A name badge slid under after them, perfectly intact. Hello, my name is Micah. It stopped against my boot like it knew exactly where my foot was in the dark. The fingers stayed there, waiting, not twitching, not searching, just resting, like a hand held out for a handshake you're expected to take. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I could hear my own pulse in my ears, that deep thump that makes you feel like you're going to pass out. I wanted to stomp on the fingers. I wanted to grab them and yank until whatever was attached came crawling into the stall and I could put my boot through its face. I didn't because the rules had been right so far and because something about the fingers felt certain, like if I touched them, we'd be agreeing to something. The badge stared up at me with its bright, friendly letters. Dumb, cheerful font. The kind you'd see on a teenager at a pretzel kiosk who's already dead inside. I did the only move I had left that didn't feel like surrender. I took the badge, and with shaking hands, I pulled the grease pencil from my pocket. It was the same pencil I used for marking conduit runs, writing quick notes on metal, anything that needed to survive sweat and grime. My hands wanted to slip. The pencil squeaked against plastic. On the back of the badge, I wrote, "Not yours." I pressed hard enough to gouge the plastic. Then I shoved it back under the stall. The fingers paused. They curled around it slow, like they were savoring it, like the message was a flavor. I heard a sound like paper tearing, not from the brown paper on the mirrors, from somewhere else. A long rip, wet at the end, like cloth tearing over bone. The fingers withdrew. The badge didn't come back. I waited for running, for laughter, for anything. Instead, the PA system came on again, but this time it wasn't cheerful. It was angry. It was layered, like multiple voices stacked and squeezed through one speaker. "Micah Reynolds," it said, and every syllable felt like a hook in my ribs. "You broke the rules." "Nosleep." I didn't answer. I clenched my teeth until my jaw hurt. I pressed my shoulder into the stall wall like I could merge with tile if I leaned hard enough. The lights flickered. The yellow-green hue pulsed once, twice, like a sick heartbeat. The brown paper on the mirrors shivered like it was breathing. Something hit the stall wall once. Not a punch. A headbutt, hard enough to rattle tile dust onto my shoulders. A little grit got into my hair and stuck to the sweat at my scalp. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood, just to keep myself from making a sound. Another hit, then another, each one closer to my head, like the thing was working its way along the wall, testing where I was. I pulled my knees up and hugged them tight, making myself small. My boots squeaked against tile. The sound echoed and came back late, like the building wanted to replay my mistake. The stall wall bowed in refraction. Tile doesn't bow. Tile cracks. Tile breaks. This flexed like it was attached to something soft. I couldn't stay there. Waiting felt like dying slowly. I crawled forward, low as I could, and slipped out of the stall like a cockroach. I kept my eyes down. I didn't look toward the paper-covered mirrors because I could feel something behind them. I could feel the pressure of a gaze without eyes. The restroom door was open just a crack, like it had been nudged. The hallway beyond was that same aquarium green light. I pushed through and stayed low. The corridor outside had changed again. No stores, no signs, just endless beige hallway with the same red stripe running straight into distance. The ceiling lights were spaced too evenly. The walls were too clean. It looked like a place designed by someone who had heard about malls but never seen one. My tool bag sat open on the floor, dead center on the stripe, waiting like bait. The clipboard rule sheet was clipped to it again, like someone had reset the scene. I stared at the bag and felt something in me break, not in a dramatic way. More like exhaustion. Like when you realize you're arguing with a machine and it's never going to get tired. Rule 6 told me to leave my tools. I left everything. Pride, paycheck, tools, all of it. I started crawling along the red stripe because standing felt like volunteering to be seen. My knees were already scraped raw. My palms stung with every movement. I kept going anyway because the alternative was staying still and waiting for the stall wall to flex again. The stripe ran under my hands like a guide rail. It still felt warm. That warmth should have been comforting. It wasn't. It felt like following a vein. Behind me, I heard movement. Not running now. Soft skittering. Lots of small taps. Like fingers again. Like hands scrambling across tile. I didn't turn. I didn't count. Counting was for when you were pretending you could control anything. The hallway started to smell different. Less paint. More old food. Like fryer grease warmed up after months. Then, slowly, the perfume started again, sweet and thick, the smell of a store you shouldn't enter. The air got humid. My shirt clung to my back. I crawled past a doorway on my left that wasn't there a second ago. It was just an opening in the wall, no door. The inside was dark, but the smell of perfume poured out like breath. I could hear something in there too. Not footsteps, more like rustling fabric. Something shifting weight on plastic. Rule 4. Do not enter any store that still smells like perfume. That means it's occupied. A voice came from inside, soft, like someone trying not to scare me. Micah, not the PA, not layered, just a voice, close enough I felt it in my ear. I froze. My hands hovered above the stripe. My knees trembled. It sounded like my mother. Not a perfect impression, not some movie ghost voice. It sounded like her when she was tired and trying to sound fine anyway. Like when she'd call me from the hospital and say she was just bored. My throat tightened so hard I thought I'd gag. The voice said, "Baby, it's cold." Kumin. I hate that I believed it for even a second. I hate that my body wanted it. Grief is like that. Grief doesn't care about logic. Grief hears your dead mother say, "Baby," and it starts crawling toward the sound before your brain catches up. My hand moved off the stripe. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed higher. The hallway pressure shifted. It felt like the building leaned in. I slammed my palm back onto the red stripe like it burned me. "No," I said out loud. The word came out raw and ugly. "Fuck off." The voice inside the doorway laughed just once, and it wasn't my mother anymore. It was something that could only copy her for a second before it got impatient. The doorway's darkness rippled, like fabric being pulled. I crawled faster. The stripe stayed straight for what felt like forever. My knees went numb. My palms started slipping on sweat and whatever residue the stripe left on the tile. My shoulders cramped. I kept going because I didn't have a plan that involved turning around. Every now and then the hallway would flicker and shift. One light panel would be missing, then back. A small vent would appear, then vanish. A door handle would show on a blank wall, then smooth itself out like it had never existed. The building was editing itself while I moved through it, like it was rearranging the set just ahead of me. I started hearing the PA in small bursts, like someone flipping channels. Not full announcements, just fragments. Customer service, lost child, clean up on. Then quieter, under the cheerful loop, another layer, low and hungry. Wear it. My mouth went dry. I swallowed and felt my own tongue sticking to my teeth. At some point, I realized I wasn't alone in the hall anymore. Not behind me, not beside me. Above, I could hear something moving in the ceiling space. Not rats, not ductwork settling. Something heavier, something that moved with intention. A slow drag, then a pause, then another drag, like a body being pulled along by its arms. Sometimes dust would fall from the ceiling panels in little puffs. Sometimes a panel would shift slightly, like someone pressed up from above. I kept crawling. I kept my eyes on the stripe. The stripe made a slight curve around corner. I followed it, and for a second my brain glitched because the hallway beyond looked like the service hall I started in. The same loitering sticker, same scuff marks, same ugly beige paint. My screwdriver was still stuck in the second wall behind the hole. The sight of it made me almost cry, not because it was comforting, because it proved something. It proved I hadn't dreamed the beginning. It proved the building could loop me back like it wanted. My tool bag was still missing, but the clipboard sheet was taped to the wall next to the hole now like a post-it notice. Same rules, same scribble. This place doesn't like being fixed. And beneath it, new writing in the same hard-pressed, angry hand. You touched it twice. I stared at that and felt my stomach sink. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I'd made it mad. The fluorescent light above me flickered, and the buzz changed pitch again. The hole in the wall looked tighter. The drywall edges weren't crumbly anymore. They looked smooth, like someone ran a finger along them. The building was healing. My screwdriver vibrated slightly in the hole, like it was being squeezed. I crawled past it, not wanting to leave anything behind that could become a hook. My toolbox was already baked. My screwdriver would be another. As I passed, the screwdriver slid deeper into the wall by itself, slow, like it was being swallowed. I didn't stop. The red stripe led away from the familiar service hall, down another corridor, and the smell shifted again. The air got colder. The humidity faded. I started to taste metal like blood or coins. The hallway opened into another atrium, but this one was wrong in a different way. It was too big for the building. The ceiling was high, but instead of skylights, there were fluorescent panels stacked in layers like the inside of a machine. The fountain in the center wasn't a fountain anymore. It was a circular desk, like a customer service desk, but without a person. Behind it, a sign hung from the ceiling on thin wires. Customer service. The letters were those cheerful mall letters, curved and friendly. I stopped crawling without meaning to. My hands just froze on the stripe, because behind the desk, there were chairs. Not mannequins, chairs. And in those chairs sat shapes that looked like people who'd been waiting a long time. Not fully formed, more like outlines under fabric, like jackets draped over nothing. One chair had a hat on it, one had a purse, one had a kid's sneaker sticking out at a wrong angle. They were all facing the desk like obedient customers. And on the desk, laid out neatly, were name badges. Dozens. Hello, my name is... Different names. Different handwriting. Some badges were cracked, repaired with tape. Some were clean and new. Some had greased pencil messages on the back, visible where they'd been flipped. Not yours. Mine. Please. A few had nothing on the back, just blank plastic like surrender. My skin crawled so hard it hurt. The PA crackled softly above me. Micah Reynolds, the cheerful voice said, like nothing was wrong, "Please take a number." A little printer on the desk whirred. A paper ticket slid out. It was white and clean. It fluttered once, then lay still. The number on it was 050. Rule 5. Count your steps to 50. My throat tightened. My heart did this dumb lurch like it recognized a pattern, like the building was proud of itself. I stayed low and kept crawling, following the stripe. The stripe curved around the customer service desk. It did not lead to the desk. It did not invite me to participate. That felt like mercy, and it scared me more than the threats. As I crawled past, one of the chair shapes shifted. The fabric rustled. A sleeve slid down like an arm moved underneath it. I kept my eyes on the stripe. The stripe led to a hallway marked employee access. The sign was bolted to the wall like a permanent thing, but the letters were slightly crooked, like someone eyeballed it. I crawled through. This hallway was narrower. The ceiling was lower. The fluorescent panels here were closer together, and the buzz had a tighter, more frantic pitch, like the building was concentrating. Halfway down, I saw a mall map kiosk standing against the wall, screen dark. Rule 1. Do not use the mall map kiosks. It hadn't been there a second ago. It looked freshly cleaned, shiny plastic, no dust. The screen was black like a turned-off TV. My reflection in it was faint and warped. As I crawled past, the screen lit up. Not with a map, with my face. Camera angled too high, like it was being shot from the ceiling. I was on the red stripe, crawling like an animal. My mouth was open. My eyes were wide. I looked pathetic. The image stuttered, then corrected. My face moved a half-second late, like the mirror. Then text appeared under my face in the same cheerful mall font. "Welcome, Micah." My stomach turned. I dug my fingers into the stripe and crawled faster, refusing to look at it again. The kiosk voice came on, a tinny speaker hidden somewhere in the plastic. "I can help you," it said, cheerful and wrong. "Say your name." Rule 2 said, "Don't answer the PA." Rule 1 said, "Don't use kiosks." The building was stacking temptations. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe right. I just crawled until the kiosk fell behind me, and its bright screen became a smear in my peripheral vision. The hallway bent again, and the lights flickered. The green tint faded back to a more normal white for a moment, like the building tried a different filter. Then the lights went out again. Total black. Rule 6. I dropped my palms flat, even though I was already crawling. I pressed harder until my wrists ached. The tile under me felt wet again, and warmer now, like a living thing. Something moved in the dark. Close. Lots of joints. Lots of little pops. The smell of perfume bloomed around me, thick enough that I tasted it. My eyes watered. A hand, those fingers touched the back of my neck. Not a grab, a tap, like a reminder. I clenched my teeth until they hurt. The voice in the dark whispered right next to my ear, low, and excited. Wear it. Then, softer, almost tender. Micah. My reflection blinked late in my mind, even without a mirror. My mother's voice tried to rise up again like a defense, like I could replace the fear with longing. I shoved it down. The lights snapped back on. Wrong again, but different wrong. They weren't green this time. They were bright, almost clinical, like a surgery suite. Too white, too clean. The hallway looked washed out. The red stripe looked darker against it like dry blood. I didn't stand. I crawled. Rule 6, crawl to the nearest restroom. A restroom sign appeared ahead like a promise. Public restrooms, arrow pointing right. I took the right. The arrow didn't feel helpful. It felt like it was pointing. The restroom door was open. Inside, the mirrors weren't covered. They were spotless. Too spotless. The sinks were there. The stalls were there. But everything was just slightly off. Like the proportions were wrong. Like the stalls were a little taller than they should be. Like the sinks were a little lower. Like the room was built for someone with different measurements. I crawled into the restroom and stopped just inside the door, panting. The mirrors across the room showed me. All of me. Too many frames, too many angles. My image repeated down the line of mirrors like a funhouse, except none of them worked. They were all accurate, but they weren't synchronized. One reflection blinked late. Another blinked earlier. One smiled faintly while I didn't. One had its head tilted like it was listening. I kept my eyes down. I stared at the tile. I focused on the red stripe, which ran right into the restroom and ended at the base of the far sink. Rule 1, if the stripe ends, stop moving. It ended. Right there. My whole body froze. The room hummed. The lights buzzed. Water dripped somewhere, slow and steady like a clock. The PA crackled, softer than before. Stop moving, the cheerful voice said, like it was reading a safety pamphlet. Good job, Micah. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my flashlight at the speaker. I didn't even have my flashlight. I didn't have anything except my body and my breath and my stubborn refusal to say yes. I stayed still, palms on tile. My knee screamed. My arms shook. Behind me, I heard running again. Bare feet on tile. Fussed. Excited. Rule 5. But I couldn't count steps because I couldn't move. The stripe ended. The rule said stop moving. Two rules collided in my skull like cars. The running stopped close. Not outside the restroom. Inside it. I felt it behind me like a heat source. Like breath. A shadow slid across the tile beside me. Thin and long, like legs bent wrong. A voice whispered right above my head. Turn around. I didn't. The voice got sharper. Micah, look at me. I stayed still. My muscles trembled like I was holding a plank. A soft scrape came from the mirrors, like fingernails on glass, like someone dragging a nail along the surface to get your attention. I kept my eyes on the tile, but the mirrors were still in my peripheral vision. I could see movement there without looking directly. One reflection, mine, lifted its head even though I didn't. It stared into the mirror as if it could see through it. Its mouth opened. Teeth showed. Not my teeth. Too even. Too white. Rule 3. If you see a mannequin that has teeth, do not look at its hands. Back up until you can't see its face anymore. But it was my face. In the mirror. Wearing teeth like a mask. My stomach flipped. I swallowed hard and tasted bile and perfume. The reflection smiled wider. Its hands rose in the mirror frame. I could feel my eyes trying to snap up to look like reflex. Like a dare. Like the rule itself was a trap built into my curiosity. I squeezed my eyelids shut. I stayed still. The voice behind me hissed, annoyed now. You're making this hard. Something touched my shoulder. Those fingers again. They pressed lightly, like they were guiding me. I flinched, but I didn't move. The pressure increased, like a push. The PA crackled, layered now, hungry. Micah Reynolds, please comply. I clenched my teeth and forced my breath out slow, like I was trying to stay conscious in pain. Then the push stopped. The running started again, sudden, not behind me this time, around me. Circling, bare feet slapping tile. Fussed, close. like a kid running rings around you, laughing. I kept my eyes shut. I kept my palms on the floor. The sound stopped. Silence hit so hard it felt loud. A paper slid across the tile and tapped my knee. I opened one just a crack. It was the rule sheet, not the clipboard. Just the paper, loose, slid under my leg like it had been delivered. Same 6 rules, but something was different. At the bottom, under this place, doesn't like being fixed, there was a new line pressed in like someone dug it into the paper with a nail. Deceptively safe doesn't mean safe. Rule 6 had been the one that sounded safest. Put your palms down. Wait. Crawl to a restroom. It felt like a child's game. It felt like something that would keep you from getting shocked by electrical issues. And now the paper was telling me it had lied. Or that the building had. My throat tightened. My hands trembled against the tile. The voice behind me whispered again. Softer, coaxing. Stand up. I stayed down. The mirrors scraped again. In my peripheral, I saw my reflections moving independently, like different versions of me trying different choices. One stood up. One turned around. One smiled. Then, abruptly, all the mirrors went black. Like the lights behind them died. Like they became windows looking into nothing. I heard something on the other side of the mirror. Not a voice. More like breathing, slow and deep. Like a big animal resting. A faint tapping started, like fingernails trying to get through. My skin crawled. I pulled my elbows in tighter. The restroom door behind me creaked. I heard it move like it was being pushed closed. I was about to be sealed in. That snapped something in me. Not bravery. Panic. Pure animal panic. Rule 1 said stop when the stripe ends. Rule 6 said crawl to the nearest restroom. I was in the restroom. Rules had got me here. Rules were also turning into a cage. I made a decision that felt like biting through a wire. I moved. I didn't stand. I crawled faster, pushing toward the door before it could close. My palms slid. My knees burned. I slammed my shoulder into the door and shoved it open. The moment I crossed the threshold, the red stripe reappeared under my hands like it had been waiting outside. It ran straight down the hall, away from the restroom. I didn't question it. I followed it like a leash. Behind me, the restroom door slammed shut hard enough to rattle the wall. Then I heard the running again, bare feet, fast, furious, coming out behind me. Rule 5. I couldn't count steps while crawling, not accurately. I did it anyway because my brain needed the ritual. 1, 2, 3. The running stayed behind, matching, then gaining. The breath got wet and close. 20. My arm shook. My elbows started to buckle. My knees were screaming. I kept crawling. 30. Something brushed my boot. Fingers skittered along the heel like they were tasting rubber. 40. The running got so close I could feel air move behind me. 48, 49, 50. The running stopped. Again at 50, exactly. The building liked its numbers. The building liked its rituals. It made me sick. I didn't turn. I kept going. The hallway started to brighten ahead, subtle at first, less harsh fluorescent, more natural spill. The air got colder. Not AC cold, outside cold. I smelled something I hadn't smelled since entering the basement. Vehicle exhaust. Road salt. The faint sharp bite of real air. I could see it then, a set of double doors with bright daylight spilling under them. Real daylight, not fluorescent. For a second, I didn't believe it. I thought it was another kiosk trick, another mirror, another welcome mica screen. I crawled faster anyway. The doors were metal, with push bars like emergency exits. The kind that should trigger alarms in an occupied building. I didn't care. I slammed both hands on the push bar and shoved. The doors opened, cold at my face like a slap. Snow hit my cheeks. I stumbled out onto asphalt and fell forward, catching myself on my hands, palms grinding into gritty ice. Pain shot my wrists. I sucked in air, and it actually tasted like air. It burned my lungs. It felt like waking up. I lifted my head. The parking lot was covered in snow, and the sky was low and gray, and my breath came out in white bursts. I froze. It was summer when I walked into that mall. Hot, humid, sticky. I'd sweated through my shirt in the service bay. I complained in my head about how I should have worn a lighter undershirt. Now my shirt was stiff with cold, my sweat turning clammy, my fingers already going numb. Cars were parked in different spots, different makes, different years. I saw models that looked newer than anything I'd seen that morning. I also saw a couple older ones, half buried, like they'd been sitting for a while. The mall sign out front was different too. I pushed myself up and stumbled toward it, slipping on ice like a drunk. My knees buckled. I caught myself on a snowbank. The snow felt real and sharp against my scraped skin. The sign was bright and modern, a logo I didn't recognize. The old name wasn't there. The old sun-faded letters were gone. My mouth went dry. I turned and looked back at the doors I'd come out of. They were plain, unmarked metal doors set into a brick wall. Above them, there wasn't a service in trance sign anymore. There wasn't any sign, just brick. The brick looked newer than it should have, like it had been replaced. No alarm was blaring. No security guard was running out yelling at me. Just wind and the soft hiss of falling snow. I started walking toward the road, not because I had a plan, but because standing there felt like waiting for the doors to decide they missed me. My boots crunched on snow. The sound didn't lag anymore. It happened when it should. It felt like my body caught up with itself. I hit the edge of the lot and saw a gas station across the road. Lights on, cars coming and going. Civilization. Proof. I waved my arms like an idiot at the first truck that slowed. The driver rolled down his window, just a crack. His face was wary. "Hey," I shouted. My voice cracked from cold and fear. What date is it?" He stared at me like I was high. His eyes flicked to my scraped hands, my dirty knees, the fact I was out here without a coat. "Get the hell away from my truck," he said, and rolled the window back up. I stepped back, hands up, trying to look harmless. Another car slowed, then sped up when they saw me. I crossed anyway, slipping, almost eating shit on the curb. My knees screamed. I didn't care. Inside the gas station, the air was warm and smelled like coffee and rubber mats. The cashier was a bored-looking guy behind plexiglass, scrolling his phone. He glanced up at me, and his face tightened. "You okay?" he asked, but it wasn't concern. It was caution, like he was already deciding whether to hit a button. My mouth didn't work. My brain didn't know what to ask first. "What year is it?" He stared. What year?" I repeated sharper, because panic makes you rude. "Just tell me." He looked at me like I was filming him, like I was trying to bait him. 2020, he said, then stopped, squinting. "You serious?" My heart punched my ribs. "Yes." He said the year again, slow this time, like he was talking to a kid. The numbers didn't fit in my head. They slid around like loose screws. I knew what year it had been when I entered the mall. I knew it like I knew my own birthday. I walked to the coffee station and grabbed the paper cup dispenser, not even for coffee. My hand was shaking too much. I bought a pack of gum I didn't want because I needed a receipt. I needed something printed by a machine that didn't care about my feelings. The cashier scanned it, the register beeped, and the receipt spat out. I took it with shaking hands and stared at the date. It wasn't tomorrow. It wasn't next week. It wasn't even next month. It was over a year later. 14 months. I stood there with that little strip of paper like it was a death certificate. My vision blurred. I blinked hard and the world stayed sharp, which made it worse, because it meant I wasn't waking up. I left the gas station without saying thanks. I didn't buy coffee. I didn't call anyone because I couldn't think of who to call. My phone finally had signal out here. It lit up with notifications like it had been dead and just came back to life. Missed calls, voicemails, texts that started worried and turned pissed and then stopped. I scrolled until my thumb hurt. My dispatcher. "You good?" My dispatcher again. "Where are you?" My dispatcher again. "Call me now." Then, "If you're on some bullshit, we're done." Then nothing. My sister. "Please call me." Then Micah. "Please." Then, "I'm calling the cops." Then, they said there's nothing they can do. Then nothing for months. My ex, who I hadn't talked to in a year. "Is this a joke?" Then, "My mom said she saw your mom at the cemetery and she was crying." "What the fuck did you do?" Then nothing. I tried calling my dispatcher. Straight to some generic message. Number disconnected or changed. I tried calling my sister. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I hung up because I couldn't handle hearing her voice and then having to explain I got eaten by them all. I stood in the gas station parking lot. Snow melting on my hair, phone buzzing, and I realized how stupid I looked. A grown man shaking like a junkie, staring at a receipt. I needed proof. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't insane. So I did the most obvious thing. I went back to my apartment. I drove because my truck was still in the mall lot. At least it should have been. Except when I looked back toward the mall, I couldn't see my truck anywhere. The lot was full of different vehicles. Mine wasn't one of them. I stood there for a minute, snow collecting on my shoulders, and it hit me like a second punch. My stuff was gone. My tools, my truck, my work bag, my screwdriver, everything. Rule 6, leave your tools. It had been more literal than I wanted. I walked to the nearest bus stop like some idiot who thought buses run on time in a snowstorm. I waited, fingers numb, watching cars pass until a bus finally came and the driver eyed me the way the truck driver did, like I might be a problem. I paid cash because my card was in my wallet, and my wallet? I checked my pockets and realized my wallet wasn't there. I felt my stomach flip. I patted my jeans, my jacket, my shirt. Nothing. It was like the building let me keep my phone as a joke. I rode the bus anyway, staring out the fogged window, tried to remember the last time I'd had my wallet. I didn't remember losing it. I remember crawling. I remember the stripe. I remember the doors. I didn't remember dropping my wallet. That minute took it. That minute knew what mattered. When I got to my building, the lobby looked the same, but the little bulletin board by the mailboxes had different flyers. New faces, new dogs, new complaints. My mailbox had a different name on it. I opened it anyway because my hands moved on muscle memory. It was locked. Of course it was. My key ring was also missing. I hadn't noticed because my fingers were numb. I went upstairs. The hallway smelled like someone cooked curry recently, a smell I didn't recognize. Someone had put a new rug by their door. The light fixtures were different. I stood outside my apartment door and felt my pulse hammer. The door was painted a different color. My number was the same, but the paint was fresh, and there was a wreath on it like it was someone's home and they cared. I knocked. Footsteps came. The door opened, and a man I'd never seen stood there in sweatpants, holding a toddler on his hip. The kid stared at me like I was a stranger because I was. "Can I help you?" the man asked, tight and irritated. I stared at him and tried to make words. This is my apartment." He blinked. "No, it's not." "Yes, it is." I snapped because anger is easier than fear. "I live here." He shifted the kid. "Buddy, I don't know who you are. We've been here." He stopped, like he didn't want to give me too much info. Then he said, "Look, you've got the wrong place." I tried to look past him into the apartment. The furniture was different. The walls were a different shade. The smell was different. It wasn't mine. My throat tightened. "What's the date?" I asked again because it was the only thing my brain could handle. He looked at me like I was going to rob him. "Get out of the hallway," he said. "I'm calling the cops." I stepped back, hands raised, palms up, and the gesture made my palms sting where the tile had scraped them. The pain grounded me for a second. I stumbled down the stairs back into the cold lobby and sat on the bottom step like my legs had decided they were done. I called my landlord. The number I had saved went to some woman's voicemail with a different name. I searched the building management company online. The website was different. The logo was different. The phone number connected to a receptionist who told me they'd never heard the name I gave. I went to my company next because that was a solid thing. My job, my schedule, people who knew me. The shop was in the same industrial lot, but the sign out front had changed. New name, new branding. The building had been repainted. I walked in, and the receptionist behind the desk looked at me like I'd wandered into the wrong place. She had a different face than the receptionist I remembered. That alone made my stomach sink. I'm looking for my mouth couldn't form my dispatcher's name. It felt like a word that belonged to a dream. She waited, expression flat. I said my own name, Micah Reynolds. "I work here." She stared. Then she did the polite thing. She smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. Do you have an appointment? She asked. No, I snappat. I'm on payroll. She clicked her mouse, the sound sharp in the quiet lobby. I don't see you. Look harder. Her smile dropped. Sir, if you're looking for someone, you need to call the supervisor, I said, louder than I meant. Heads turned from the work floor. A guy in a reflective vest looked over like he was deciding whether to help or throw me out. A manager came out, not the manager I knew. Different man, different haircut, same posture, tired, defensive. What's going on? He asked. I work here, I said. I'm Micah. I've been missing. His face tightened. We're not hiring right now. I'm not asking for a job. I snapped. I have a job. I had a job. I was on a service call at. I stopped because saying a dead mall swallowed me sounded like a joke. He sighed, like he'd dealt with people like me before. Sir, you need to leave. I wanted to argue. I wanted to grab him by the collar and force him to recognize me. Instead, I stood there shaking, realizing I didn't have ID. I didn't have keys. I didn't have anything but a phone full of old messages and a receipt that proved time happened. I walked out of the shop and sat on the curb in the snow until my ass went numb. Eventually, I did what you do when you don't know what else to do. I went to a police station. The desk officer listened to me with that expression people get when they've already made up their mind. He asked where my car was. I told him the mall. He asked why I didn't have ID. I told him I lost it. He asked why I'd been gone 14 months and didn't call anyone. I didn't have a good answer that didn't involve red stripes and teeth. He took my name, ran it, then frowned at the screen. There's a missing person report, he said, finally. From last year. My chest tightened. Relief and dread hit at the same time. From my sister? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. So I'm real, I said, and I hated how desperate I sounded. He looked at me like I was a problem file. Where have you been? I stared at him. The fluorescent lights in the station buzzed with a familiar pitch, and for a second my stomach flipped because that buzz sounded like insects trapped in glass. I swallowed. I don't know. I lied because telling the truth felt like walking back into the mall voluntarily. He leaned back. You show up after 14 months with no ID, no vehicle, no money, and you want us to what? My voice cracked. I want to call my sister. He let me use the desk phone. My hand shook so bad I almost dropped the receiver. I dialed her number from memory because my phone screen looked too bright, too unreal. It rang. She answered on the third ring, and her voice was different. Not older in some dramatic way, just tired, cautious. Hello, she said. I couldn't talk for a second. The sound of her made me want to collapse. Hey, I managed. It's me. Silence. Then sharp, who is this? Micah, I said. It's Micah. I heard her inhale like she'd been punched. Then she said, very quietly, don't. What? I said. No, it's me. I'm here. Her voice got louder, angry now. Don't do that. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I snapped. Anger again, my stupid armor. I'm calling you. I'm alive. She laughed, one ugly sound. Alive. Okay, where have you been then? I looked at the desk officer, then away. My throat tightened. I don't know, I said again, and it sounded like bullshit even to me. She went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, say something only you would know. My mind scrambled. I thought about stupid childhood memories, about secrets, about things that could prove me. I said the first thing that came. You broke Dad's tape measure and blamed it on me, and he made me mow the lawn for a month. Another silence. I heard a small sound, like her hand covering her mouth. Then she whispered, oh my God. My eyes burned. I stared hard at the station wall until the burn eased. Yeah, I said. It's me. Her voice shook. Where are you? I told her the station address. She didn't say, I'm coming. She said, don't leave. Don't go anywhere. The words hit me wrong. Not because they were bad advice. Because they sounded like Rule 1. Stop moving. I felt my stomach twist again. She arrived an hour later, face pale, hair messy, eyes rimmed red like she hadn't slept in years. She slammed her car door so hard it echoed off the station walls, and I flinched because echoes still made me nervous. When she saw me, she froze, like her brain couldn't accept the picture. Then she walked up and hit me in the chest hard enough to shove me back. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" she hissed, voice breaking. "Do you know what you did to us?" I didn't, I started. She hit me again, then grabbed my jacket and pulled me close like she was trying to make sure I was solid. Her hands shook against my back. "I thought you were dead," she said into my shoulder. "I buried you in my head. I had to. I'm sorry," I said. And it was the first honest thing I'd said all day. "I'm sorry. I swear I didn't." She pushed me back and looked at my hands. The scraped palms, the bruised knees, the raw patches like I crawled through hell. Her face tightened. "Where have you been?" I opened my mouth. I saw my reflection in the station glass door behind her, and it blinked late. My stomach dropped. I swallowed the truth again. I got lost," I said. "I woke up, and it was later." She stared at me like she wanted to believe and wanted to punch me again. The cops took a statement, but it was pointless. Without ID, without a story they could file, without anything concrete, I was just a missing guy who wandered back. That happens. People disappear for drugs, for mental breakdowns, for running from debt, for affairs. Cops have boxes for that. My truth didn't fit any box. My sister took me home, and home meant her apartment because I didn't have one anymore. Her place smelled like laundry detergent and coffee. Normal smells. I clung to them like a drowning man. That first night, I slept on her couch with a blanket that scratched my skin. I woke up every hour, sweating, sure I heard running in the hallway outside. At 2 a.m., I heard a soft crackle from her kitchen speaker. Not a PA, just the smart speaker she used for music. It said, in a cheerful voice, "Micah Reynolds, please return to the customer service desk." My blood turned to ice. I sat bolt upright, heart hammering. My sister stumbled out of her bedroom, hair wild. "What's wrong?" she whispered. I stared at the speaker like it was a loaded gun. It was dark, lights off, but the little indicator ring glowed faintly. I walked to it and unplugged it so hard the cord yanked. The room went silent. Too silent. My sister stared at me. "Micah, what the hell?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. My tongue felt thick. My palms stung. She went back to bed without another word. I sat on the couch until sunrise, staring at the wall, listening for footsteps that never came. In the morning, she demanded a real explanation. Not "I got lost." Not "something happened." She wanted the story. So I told her parts. Not all. Not the teeth. Not the name badge. Not the way the mirrors looked at me. I told her there was a clothes mall. I told her the basement was a maze. I told her I blacked out and woke up later. I let her fill in the blank with anything that made sense. She didn't buy it, but she also didn't know what else to do because I was sitting at her kitchen table like a ghost that came back with too much weight. Over the next week, I tried to rebuild proof that I existed. I went to the DMV with my birth certificate, which my sister had in a box because she's the kind of person who keeps documents. They looked at me like I was trying to steal my own life. My photo didn't match their records anymore because their record had a big stamp across it. Missing. A note. Presumed deceased. That phrase felt like a nail in my skull. They told me I'd need extra verification. Fingerprints. Court forms. More waiting. Waiting felt dangerous. Waiting felt like stopping on a stripe. I got a temporary ID, eventually, a flimsy paper thing that made me look like a criminal on probation. I used it to get a new bank account because my old one had been closed. My credit was wrecked. Bills had gone to collections. My phone number belonged to someone else. Everything had moved on without me like I was a dropped call. And the whole time, little things kept happening, tiny enough that my sister could dismiss them, but sharp enough that I couldn't. Perfume smell in the hallway outside her apartment. Thick and sweet, gone when you open the door. A red stripe that seemed to appear in the corner of my eye on a sidewalk crack, then vanish when I looked straight at it. My reflection in her bathroom mirror blinking late, then snapping back normal if I stared too long. One morning, I found a sticker on the inside of my jacket. No loitering, half peeled in the exact same corner I'd seen in the basement. I didn't tell her about that one. I pulled it off and threw in the trash, and then stood over the trash can for a long time like it might climb back out. I try to find them all. I know how that sounds. It sounds like someone with trauma going back to the scene. It sounds like a dumb horror movie move. But I needed proof. I needed to see if it existed. I needed to prove to myself that time didn't just slide out from under my feet because I went crazy. So I drove out there with my sister one afternoon, snow still on the ground, winter biting hard. She argued the whole way. She didn't want to take me. She thought it was a bad idea. She was right. We fought anyway because my brain was a trapped animal and I needed the cage to have a door. "You're not going in," she said, gripping the steering wheel. "You're not even getting out of the car." "I just need to see it," I said. "You saw it," she snapped. "You saw it, and then you disappeared. That's why," I said, voice tight. "That's exactly why." She shook her head, jaw clenched. "You want to go back there and what? Fix it?" The words hit me like a punch because they echoed the scribble. "This place doesn't like being fixed." "I'm not fixing shit," I said. "I'm just looking." When we got there, my stomach dropped. The mall wasn't the mall. The lot was there, huge and empty except for plows and salt piles. The building was there, but it looked different. Newer. Not new, but renovated in ways that didn't match my memory. The sign out front had the new logo I'd seen on the snowy night. The name was the same as the one on the sign that made my skin crawl. The main entrances were chained. The windows were boarded. A big banner hung across the front in clean, printed letters. "Permanently closed." Under that, smaller text, "Closed since year." The year was years before I'd gone in. I stood outside the car, cold biting my cheeks, and I couldn't breathe right. My sister got out too, slower, cautious. "Micah," she said, softer now, seeing my face. "This place has been shut down. Everyone knows that." "It was open," I said, voice hoarse. My mind flashed to the property manager shaking my hand. To the side door. To his buddy voice. "He hired me," I said, like repeating it could make it true. "He called me. I had an invoice." "Show me," she said. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and searched my email. Search texts. Search call logs. The call from the property manager wasn't there. The invoice email wasn't there. The job ticket in the app was closed as an no-show. It didn't list them all. It listed a generic site visit with no address. It was like the building didn't just eat my time. It ate the paperwork. I felt sick. My stomach twisted and I had to swallow hard. My sister's face went pale. "Okay," she said, and I could tell she was trying to stay calm for me. "Okay, maybe you mixed up. Maybe it was another building." "It was this," I said, too sharp. She flinched. "Don't yell at me." "I'm not." I started, then cut myself off because I was yelling. I walked toward the building without meaning to. My boots crunched on snow and gravel. I stopped at the edge of the lot because my legs wouldn't go further. My body remembered crawling. My body remembered doors. I stared at the service side, trying to find the exact entrance. The building looked solid, boring, dead. Then I saw it. A thin red line painted on the concrete curb near a side walkway. Just a stripe. Faded. But there. My heart jumped. I stepped toward it, then stopped, frozen. My sister grabbed my arm. "Micah," she said, warning. I stared at the stripe. It looked warm, even in the cold, like a vein under skin. Rule 1. If the stripe ends, stop moving. I didn't know where it ended. I didn't know where it led. My sister tightened her grip. "We're leaving," she said. I didn't argue. I couldn't. My mouth was dry. My tongue tasted like perfume even out here. On the drive back, she kept glancing at me like she was afraid I'd vanish out of the passenger seat if she looked away too long. That night, I had a dream I was crawling again, palms on wet tile, the red stripe under me like a leash. In the dream, the stripe ended at my sister's bedroom door. I woke up sweating, heart hammering. I got up and walked to her bathroom because I needed water, needed something normal. The mirror over the sink showed me. I stared at my face, trying to catch the delay. For a few seconds, it was normal. Then my reflection blinked late. I swallowed hard. The reflection smiled, not me smiling. It lifted a hand and pressed its palm to the glass. I stumbled back, so hard my hip hit the counter. The reflection mouthed words silently. Micah, Micah, Micah. I slammed my hand over the light switch and turned the bathroom light off. Darkness. Rule 6. If the lights go out, put both palms on the floor. My heart hammered. My body wanted to obey. My knees almost buckled. But this wasn't the mall. This was my sister's apartment. This was my life. This was supposed to be safe. I stood there in the dark, trembling, refusing to put my palms on the tile. In the darkness, I heard a soft sound behind me. Running, bare feet on tile, fast and excited. My skin went cold. I didn't turn. I didn't move. I counted steps anyway, whispering into the dark like a prayer. 1, 2, 3. The running got closer. 10. My throat tightened. I could smell perfume. 20. The sound stopped. I hit 30 in my head because my mouth stopped working. I waited until I hit 50 in silence. Then I flipped the light back on. The bathroom was normal. The mirror showed me, blinking in sync. No smile, no hand. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the sink until my knuckles hurt. I stayed awake until sunrise again, because sleep felt like letting the building try again. Weeks turned into months, and I did the paperwork dance to get some version of my identity back. I found a shitty room to rent because I couldn't live on my sister's couch forever. I got a job at a different company because mine had moved on. Every job felt wrong, like the world had shifted half an inch and everything scraped. Sometimes on job sites, I'd catch myself listening for the fluorescent buzz, measuring it, waiting for the pitch change. I'd find myself scanning floors for red stripes like a paranoid idiot. I stopped going to malls. I stopped going to big box stores. I stopped going anywhere that smelled like perfume and food courts and dead air. The first time I had to walk past a store window with mannequins, my heart tried to climb out of my throat. I did it anyway because life doesn't pause for your nightmares. I was walking down a street in my new neighborhood, early evening, cold wind, people rushing past with bags. A clothing store had a big display window with mannequins in winter coats. I kept my eyes on the sidewalk and walked fast. Then I caught it in the glass, just a flicker. One mannequin wasn't wearing a store tag. It was wearing an employee badge. Hello, my name is Micah. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. My feet kept moving because I didn't trust myself to stop. Stopping felt like loitering. I didn't look at its hands. I kept walking. I counted my steps to 50. At step 23, I smelled perfume, thick and sweet, like it was right under my nose. At step 35, I heard running behind me, fast and barefoot. I kept walking. At step 50, the smell was gone. The running stopped. I did not turn around. I went home and locked every lock like it mattered. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall until my eyes burned. Sometimes I wake up and smell perfume in my bedroom, sweet and thick like it's right under my nose. Sometimes my reflection blinks late. And every once in a while, rare enough that it feels like the building is being patient, I'll be walking past some glass, any glass, and I'll catch my name in cheerful font somewhere it shouldn't be. A sticker on a pole. A printed badge left on a bus seat. A label on a package in the mailroom addressed to someone else, but with my name underneath like a joke. Hello, my name is Micah. I don't touch it. I don't break it. I don't fix it because I learned something ugly. Some places don't haunt you by killing you. They haunt you by keeping you, then letting you go wrong, like a product returned with pieces missing.